I apologize for those of you who are used to seeing the what I call the hippie background in the office. My wife's whatever that's called. I don't even know what it's called, but I wanted to do this video because there's something that I spoke about this last Shabbat, which I thought was important. Several years ago, I had a conversation with my sister about an article that came out in an Orthodox Jewish publication, Orthodox magazine. I don't remember the specific one, but it mentioned that some children in certain circles apparently were suffering from obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD. Different reasons why that might be the case. And I think there was an issue that was brought up potentially of chinuch, of instruction, the way that the commandments, the mitzvot, were communicated. Certainly, this last week's parasha, in Parashat Ki Tavo, we have the tochacha, we have the rebuke, all the curses that are given upon the children of Israel if they fail to obey the covenant. And I could see, having a child who's on the spectrum myself, where if there's not a proper communication of these things, that it can be a lot of stress on an individual that is desiring to keep the mitzvot, but they're concerned about doing things perfectly, and they can become, obsessively compulsed about doing something over and over again to make sure they did it correctly. I don't think it's anything characteristic necessarily of Orthodoxy in general or anything like that, but I think it's something that is worth considering. And the reason that I mention that is because in last week's parsha, the tochacha is included. But what's interesting is that at the beginning of the parsha, as Rabbi Baruch Gelman points out, there's something which is sort of uncommon in the Torah itself, and that's that we have a vidui, a confessional prayer, but it's not the type of vidui that we find in the daily shacharit or in mincha, these confessional prayers, tachanun, where we essentially have a mini Yom Kippur, a confession of sins, the things that we've done wrong, throughout that day. It's actually a positive confession where the individual says, I have brought the first fruits, and so forth. I've done everything that has been commanded of me. He takes it to the Kohen and in the Beit HaMikdash, the temple. He presents these things and he says, I've done everything according to what Hashem has commanded. It's a very interesting perspective because throughout the Torah portion, or throughout the entire Torah, we find many instances where the children of Israel are rebuked and punished for the sins that they commit. But we have an instance here where Hashem basically says, you will do this and you will state that you have complied and done everything that I have commanded you. And the idea, I think, that is clear here is that there is a positive reinforcement of behavior. It's almost as if Hashem recognizes the need for humans to be applauded at some point in their lives and saying, you actually did this correctly. You've done something good. And I see that as a parent with 3 little boys. I try to think about how many times I've corrected them. And sometimes the corrections are without question necessary. Life-saving, put down the knife, don't stick your finger in the outlet, don't jump off, this, that, the other. But there has to be an encouragement. You did this, excellent job. You played the guitar just incredibly well, and it's just something that's part of human nature that we have to receive a positive element of reinforcement, of edification, however we want to term it. And I think that Hashem recognizes that. It's something that we need as human beings to know that we have the potential to continue to do what is right. It's not simply, if I don't do this, there will be consequences. But yes, I can continue, and there is a path forward for me to do so. It's interesting because Rabbi Baruch Gelman told the story, I think it was attributed to Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach, regarding Rabbi Shimon Kivornich, I think is the way that you pronounce it. And it's the story that relates how he, after he would give his shiur on Thursdays or whatever it was, would go off and sort of disappear. And his students began to notice this. He wouldn't stay, he wouldn't talk, he wouldn't eat. Some of them followed him, and he went out, and they sort of hid and saw what he was doing. And they noticed that there were poor people coming up to him, poor Jews, and they would come up to him, and they would ask him, can you give us tzedakah? Can you give us some, something, we're financially stressed. And he would tell them, and he would say, no, I apologize, I can't. But what I can do is I can give you a loan, and I'm going to trust that you're going to pay me back when you have the opportunity to do so. And the people were encouraged at his statement. And it's sort of bizarre because you would think, they're poor, they're destitute, why would they be happy about a loan? And they confronted their Rebbe about this, and he said, listen, these individuals have fallen to the wayside, they're the dregs of society, at least that's the way people there, perceive them. And for me to tell them, no, I'm not going to, give you something. I'm not going to give you a handout. I'm going to give you a loan. It means that I trust them sufficiently, that I have hope, and there's an assurance that I have that they will come through some way, somehow in the future. And it gives them a sense of positivity and a positive reinforcement that they need, because these individuals need to be uplifted. They need to ascend, if you will. And this is why I tell them it's a loan and not a gift or tzedakah. And it's amazing, because in that sense, I think Hashem in the Torah portion of Ki Tavo is giving us that gift, that idea that if we are, able to keep one mitzvah, that He will reward that, and He will give us another mitzvah, as the rabbis say. But it's an idea that we do have a path forward. It's not simply one of disobedience. It's not one of hopelessness. But if we can do one thing, if we can garner the faith to keep one mitzvah, then Hashem is gracious, and that He will give us the kind of encouragement that we need to proceed in our lives. And I see that in the lives of my children, and I think I've seen that in the lives of other families, that there's always a balance that has to take place. We have to make sure that people understand that there are consequences for the actions that they undertake. I don't know if it was Rabbi Baruch Gelman or if it was Rabbi David Silverberg that I was reading that mentioned that, the consequences of the commandments, it's not that Hashem wants to punish us, but they have consequences if we violate them. Just like if you touch a hot stove, there are consequences to it. It's not something that Hashem is just waiting to strike down the person. But if we violate these things that Hashem has given us, they breed their own consequences. And I think that in the midst of that, even as that's easy to convey to people, we do have to tell them it is simple. It is something that can be understood, and you can achieve one mitzvah at a time. And I think that's especially true as we approach the new year.